So we're going to talk about, we're a little recap on the first two segments. We talked about the science of the cycle and learning our cycle. And now we're going to talk about fitness and incorporating training into our cycle. So take it away.
Yeah, so I thought I'd start this one with a bit of a story around, how I got into connecting the training and the cycle together. So I used to train a lot, like 3 or 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. I used to compete in Olympic lifting, so
Wow.
Olympic weightlifting. Yeah. And I had an amazing coach. I had an amazing program that really worked with my body. Have always been very good with my nutrition and my recovery. But over, the years into this training at this kind of intensity and this level, something didn't feel quite right. I was a couple of years into it, and I was finding that some days or weeks were just really hard. And I just felt like I sucked and I couldn't lift properly. Sometimes I was really tired and irritable. Sometimes my sleep was all over the place. And this really frustrated me because I had this amazing plan, this great team to support me, my nutrition, my sleep, everything I thought was like really good. And then I actually got injured. And it was when I was injured and I couldn't train that I went looking for this missing piece. I was like, what am I missing out of my plan? There's like something there. And I came across stuff on hormones and our menstrual cycle. And, I had never thought about it because I had always had a cycle that arrived on time regularly and mostly without symptoms. So I never thought, it never created an issue for me. I was never on hormonal birth control growing up. So it was just this thing that came and it was in the background. And I didn't think about it when it came to my training. And so I dived into the research about everything that we've spoken about in these last two videos, like what's happening during the cycle, how might that affect us? And then what I did, as I said in the second video, is I just wrote the day of my cycle at the top of my training journal. I thought, okay, I'm going to see if this is it. And after a few cycles, I began to notice patterns in terms of like how I felt, how my energy was, how well I lifted, how well I recovered, my sleep. And I thought, okay, like this is the piece. This is the piece that I wasn't understanding and it wasn't put in my plan. I'd always had male coaches. They are amazing coaches, but they were males. So they never thought to look at it from a female physiology perspective. And so I thought, okay, like we have female physiology, we have this cycle, which means then what happens if we tailor our training based on the patterns that we find in our cycle? So that's what we began to do with my training, is just change it. Right. In the first half of our cycle, when Beyonce comes on stage, think of Beyonce, like energy, focus, loves complex dance routines. So we have like complexity. And so this is the same with our training. In this first phase, when she comes on stage, like our energy's high, we feel really good. There's been a bit of research around, we can actually get more strength gains if we strength train in the first phase of our cycle. We can recover better. We feel less pain. And then when we get into this second phase, some stuff starts to happen with our physiology, which can make it a little harder. So our core temperature's higher, which makes our time to fatigue a little quicker, especially if we're training in hot, humid environments. It plays around with our hydration a little bit. So we have to make sure that we're really hydrated again if we're doing long endurance training or training in hot, humid environments. Our sleep can be a little off in that second phase as well. Progesterone, which is our dominant hormone, is actually quite catabolic, which what that means breaking down. Whereas Beyonce, estrogen, she's anabolic. She's like building up. So we have this like build up phase, and then we have this more breakdown phase. Now that's not good or bad. It just is what it is. So what we need to focus on in the second phase is enough protein. So eating enough calories, like actually enough energy, but really focusing on our protein, especially around our training, and especially if we're strength training a lot. Mm-hmm. So understanding that is just, it's a tool, because then I know if I get to my second phase, these things are going to happen from a physiological perspective. So then I need some strategies to put in place. It's not about not training, and a lot of women will think that. They think that their period is a burden or their cycle is a burden or that second phase, they shouldn't train. Actually, there's a lot of research out there saying that moving your body and training is actually really beneficial to have a healthy, regular cycle. And so it's just about understanding what's happening and then being able to put in strategies in place. So for the women that I work with, if they're in their cycle years, the way that we kind of do it is, I like to link it into the 4 phases of our cycle to like 4 training phases. So when we're on our bleed, I like to call it like the build phase. We're going to start a new program. We're going to start to build into that. So, we might not be at super high volume or super heavy weights, but we're definitely starting that program. And then we come into this like train hard phase where Beyonce is high, we're around ovulation, and we can really use that. Yeah. If our energy is good, we have our hormones there, we can get a lot out of our training. So it's a great time to learn complex skills or to lift a bit heavier, to go a little bit harder. Because we can just use our physiology. Actually, a really cool fact, which I've noticed in my own training and working with women and their cycles, is that in the first phase, we tend to tolerate higher reps and less sets, which means we can do a movement multiple times for high reps, and we tend to be pretty good. Whereas in the second phase, we don't actually tolerate high reps that well. We tolerate lower reps, but just doing more sets because we can rest in between those sets. It's a little harder for us to concentrate and focus in that second phase of the cycle. It's a little harder for us to coordinate our body. So if we come in at it doing like lower reps, more sets, we rest longer, maybe we change the weights, we're not lifting as heavy. And just those little modifications can really support where we are in our cycle.
Right. Yo, that's great. Yeah. I think it's going to take the mystery out of why we feel certain way, certain times of the month, and why, the energy is higher in the earlier days and it kind of wanes in the later days, and just how to tailor your workout routine accordingly, and not to beat yourself up about it, but to understand it and why it's happening, physiologically why it's happening. And I think it's fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah. I will say though, I'm going to throw like a little caveat in there. We have to go back and we have to zoom out to the bigger umbrella. Because if we talk about this training and cycle stuff, what happens is that we can limit ourselves around believing that this is the best and the right time to train, and then this is not going to be the great time to train.
Right.
But I've actually had some of my hardest training days on day 14, like when I'm meant to be at my peak. And I've had some of my best training days on day 28 or day 1 of my cycle. So that's really important to understand, that it's a big part of your umbrella. So if you're actually super stressed, or you didn't sleep well the night before, or you didn't eat well or enough food the day before, you could be on day 14, but your training might not go that well because the body's stressed. It didn't sleep and you didn't fuel it enough. And it may have nothing to do with where you are in your cycle. So you need to use it as a piece and a tool amongst all your other tools and all your other prongs in your umbrella.
Absolutely. So let's just touch quickly on menopausal women who aren't cycling anymore. What does it look like for them in terms of training schedules and fitness schedules? Does it matter? Is it similar?
It's a great question. It's a really important topic and conversation. Most of the women that I work with are in their 40s and 50s. So they're in peri-menopause or they're postmenopausal. Now, because of those hormonal changes, remember just before we spoke about how estrogen is like our building up and then progesterone is our breaking down. So when we get to like perimenopause or into being menopausal, estrogen and progesterone have both gone down. So we actually lose the properties and the really cool benefits of Beyonce. She's like left the stage. So So that building up, Beyonce is really important for our bones, for our muscle mass, and for our metabolism. So those are three really key things. And when she leaves the stage, we get a little bit of stuff happening with our metabolism. We can lose more muscle mass because she's not there to help build it up, and we can lose our bone density. So what we actually need to do is we need to make sure that, well, one, we're eating enough, and we're eating enough quality protein to keep the muscle mass that we have on us, because the muscle mass is really important for like posture and strength, and to reduce the risk of, injury. And the muscle mass is our active tissue. So it's the one that burns adipose tissue, so fat mass at rest. So the more muscle mass I have on my body, the stronger my metabolism, and the more fat I'll burn at rest. But if I start to lose all my muscle mass, well, then it definitely is going to affect like my frame, the risk of injury. It's going to affect my metabolism, starts to slow down. So the two biggest complaints I hear from women in perimenopause and postmenopausal is changes to body composition and changes to sleep. And it's because of the hormones and the hormones declining. So what we need to do is give the body the same kind of build up effect as if Beyonce was on stage, and strength training is one way we can do that. So we actually need to be lifting weights. If we can, we need to do a little bit of plyometric, which means like a little bit of jumping because it stimulates bone growth. So there's definitely a strategy that we need to take when it comes to our training to support our bones and our muscle mass. We also need to be really on top of our food. We need to be making sure that we're eating enough quality protein to really support our metabolism.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think the protein piece is an easy one to let slip and let slide. And, so many women, we're still raising kids during perimenopause and menopause.
Yes.
And even more so nowadays versus the past. And it's easy to skip the meals, forget to eat, just have something quick on the go, or let that coffee run you until lunchtime, or right? Like we're often low men on the totem pole. So I know for me, getting enough adequate protein is often a challenge. I'm now more aware. So I'm working really hard to get enough, but gosh, it's great to hear that it really is important, and it will make a difference to our body composition as we age, and help us stay strong and keep our bones strong, and our body looking as youthful as possible, because our muscles fill out our skin and we need that. We don't want to lose it.
Yeah, there's definitely, there's like a composition part of it, and then there's like, the health part of it and the reducing of injuries. Both are important to a lot of women. And if we can understand this a little earlier, and we can create this training strategy and plan that's really going to help us move in to perimenopause and menopause, I want to enter into it with as much muscle as I could possibly have, just because it's so hard to build muscle for a female. It can be really hard to keep it on us. Mm-hmm. And then when we get into perimenopause and menopause, it kind of, again, it becomes a little harder. You need to create a plan and a strategy, and you need to work at it. Like it's work. Yeah. It's work to enter this next stage of your life really well set up and prepared for it.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the reasons I love sharing what I'm learning. And I got into doing this, my passion project in the first place is, it's one thing to be making all these changes as we're older and already here. But how incredible it would be if we can start younger, and we can share it with our daughters, and we can share it with the younger generation, that, don't just blow through your teens and 20s and 30s just having the time of your life, because all of a sudden shit gets real, and now you're making up for lost time. Like if you can put those building blocks in place at a young age, and this is what every meal with our kids, I'm like, this is why we're eating this, and this is why it's important, and here's the protein, and enough about this don't eat complex carbohydrates crap, like all these ridiculous diets that are out there. No, we need to eat whole, real foods, and a lot of it as healthy as possible so that we can age in a healthy manner and we're not broken and we're not stooped and we're not at the doctors all the time on multiple prescription pills. Like we have our own health destiny in our hands and we can make changes even at my age. But even more importantly, young people need to have this information so that they can start out on the right path instead of playing the catch-up game that my generation's playing and my parents' generation's playing. We don't have to be old and decrepit. We can be upright and strong and healthy and functioning with great memories and traveling the world at 70, 80, 90 and above. So, I love what you're doing. I love your messaging. I think it's so important that women know how the cycle works and the signs of the cycle and how we can train with it and just train in general. Thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to share this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the work that you do and for having me on.
Well, thanks, Amy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I appreciate you.